David Chalmin, member of Dream House Quartet, composer, obviously multi-instrumentalist, given everything that we see in the frame. I'm glad we could take some time to talk about Dream House Quartet and your work. And before we get started talking specifics about that, I want to ask you about something Meredith Monk said, and I know you're performing her work on this tour. She said, "The more I go through life, I realize that there's really no separation between practice and art at all. The two things more and more become one rather than two different aspects of my life." Do you feel the same way? And how much do you feel like your art and your practice are on parallel paths?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's the passion is the main thing with music. In my case, it comes with playing the guitar, some piano first, then the guitar, then discovering about electronics and synths and all the mess you see around me. And I don't know, you never feel like you're making art. You actually always think you're practicing and trying to make something better, improve, or it's, to me, it's a craft also. And I love thinking of myself as a craftsman. To me, it's a very noble thing. We have this word in French, artisan, and I like to think of this because, yeah, it's after years of practice of many different things, you create your own personality, musical personality. And in my experience, it's also working with sound and manipulated sound recording, mixing, and so, yeah, it's all of these practices that actually make my art, if we want to call it that. I mean, it's so, yeah, it's totally right. Love it.
And do you feel like you live your life the way you create your art? Are those two similar for you?
Yeah, it's totally the same thing. Actually, the it's continuous. I mean, it's not a job, it's not work. It's yeah, it's making music, being with people I love, I admire, trying to improve on my knowledge, on my instrument experience. So yes, it's only one thing. Totally.
Now, from what I can tell, your first collaboration with the Lebec sisters was on 2013's minimalist Dream House, which obviously shares a bit of a name. So since that album shares two-thirds of the ensemble that you formed in 2018 to be Dream House Quartet, are there any similarities or differences, or was it merely the introduction of Bryce Dessner as a fourth member?
Yeah, it was definitely the beginning of that adventure. It was a huge thing for Katia, Marianne, and I starting this project. We had other projects before that, but that one in 2013, that's really when we discovered all the minimalist music. Of course, we knew some of it, but thanks to a brilliant person named Igor Toroni-Lalich, who is a British journalist, who asked us to do a program of minimalist music in King's Place in London. We were introduced to all these amazing composers, and actually that was the moment where everything connected, because Katia and I were coming from different backgrounds. Katia is classical musician, obviously, interpret, and she's played a lot of contemporary music, and I come from rock, electronic music, and our goal was always to find something to do together. So for years we were looking, and in that music, in the minimalist movement from the second half of the 20th century, we really found something that made sense for both of us, because this is the moment when classical musicians decided to do something different and reconnect with folk music, with music from all around the world, and get out of the little elite genre that the contemporary music was, finding itself. So yes, that was the beginning of a research and assimilation of this music. which years after meeting Bryce Dessner became the Dream House Quartet, because when we did the first minimalist Dream House project, we played a lot of existing music and some reinterpretations. But now with the Dream House Quartet, we think more like a band. We play Bryce's music, my music, and still, of course, some Steve Reich, Phil Glass, and we still use like the Meredith Monk, the big composers of that musical genre. But now it's become a band, I would say.
And the four of you also recorded El Chan together, which I think that predated the formal, realization of Dream House Quartet, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, that was the first piece we played by Bryce was Haven, which is on the El Chan record, and that was really the first track we recorded, the four of us, and I was involved in the rest of the album. It's all Bryce Dessner's music, and I recorded all of it, and I recorded the double concerto he wrote for Katia and Marielle. So that was already a collective work with the first piece of the quartet.
Was it at that moment that you realized there was something magical happening amongst the four of you? What inspired formalizing this as a quartet?
Well, I think first of all, like a big friendship and musical connection. There was another project with Bryce and his brother Aaron and Justin Vernon. Bryce had actually invited a lot of musicians in Philharmonie de Paris for a big concert. It was called Invisible Bridge, and it was about the same connection, like the invisible bridge that connects all music. And we were invited because we were already friends, and we were invited to play with Katia Marielle and some other friends, Raphaël Seguinier, Massimo Pupillo. We had a Moondog project at that time, and so we came to perform there. And then the idea came like, okay, we should. He came and played with us, and we said, okay, we have to do that more often, and we have to make this a thing. And we actually spend a lot of time working together. We work on scores, recording various composition works. So it made sense to add the Bryce in the crew.
I had the privilege of talking to Katia and Marielle in 2019 when they were doing Cézanne's work at the Hollywood Bowl. And she told me that they were introduced to Bryce by Philip Glass. What was the path that got them to you and the path that got you and Bryce together?
I met Katia and Marielle in 2003 in a festival in Chambéry in Savoie that my parents have created. It's called the Bel Air Festival, Bel Air Clavier Festival. And I've always worked there as helping, driving, or serving at the bar. Or it's a very small festival, but we're lucky to have like the greatest musicians coming every year. It was Renaud Capuçon first festival, so for years he was the artistic director, and so he would have these amazing people come and play for nothing, just because it was like a very family friendly place. And so Katia and Marielle came one year to play and to perform at the festival, and I was their official driver. So that's how they knew me, and then they found out I was a musician. We saw each other again in Paris, and then there are all other story. But Katia and I have been partner for almost 20 years now. So that's how I met them. And Bryce, I met him at the same time as Katia and Marielle when in Los Angeles through Phil Glass.
Now I have to ask you, since you mentioned that you were making cocktails, do you have a specialty?
I invented a special gin and tonic that is named after my studio, the Gin Tonto. It's very good.
Good. If we ever meet, I'll have to have you make one for me.
If you come to the Basque Country, yes, please come say hello.
I would love to do that. I also talked to Bryce in 2019 when he had his Mapplethorpe work being done at Walt Disney Concert Hall. And I asked him about the Lebec sisters, and he said they can play 3 notes and it can just be the most beautiful music, and they make music immediately. They also work harder. It's a joy to make music with them. Apart from your personal relationship, what's your experience, not only with having them as members of the Dream House Quartet, but collaborating with them and Bryce on projects like Electric Fields?
Well, it's a true inspiration. I totally agree with Bryce, and it's amazing to see two musicians work that much. I mean, they are as gifted as any interpreter. Those performers who go around the world and can play anything. They have amazing techniques, but there are very few of them who work so hard in research, in interpretation, because you were mentioning Saint-Saëns, or when they play Poulenc, for example, that they played for many, many years. When they have a concert with the Concerto de Poulenc, they will still practice a lot before the concert, and they find new things after 30 years of playing it, and I find this very amazing. And they have a knowledge of music that is different from mine, definitely, but from a composer or any kind of musician, because the way they look at a score and they can improve your music. I mean, it's such a privilege to write for people like this, because they put their hands and they make it 10 times better than what you had in mind.
Yeah, I've been a fan of their work for a very long time, but it would surprise the younger version of myself who listened to them doing classical music and Gershwin and things like that, to hear them perform music by Tom Yorke of Radiohead. I also happen to be an enormous Radiohead fan. But the same conversation I had with them, Katya told me what is really interesting with Tom is he thinks about atmosphere and mystery, and it's really good for us to work with a musician like that. So what are your thoughts about the role of atmosphere in relation to, or in the absence of, melody in a modern work?
To me, it's essential, because in the music I make and the music I love, it's a lot about that. I mean, I listen to a lot of ambient music or drone music, where you can really get lost in a one chord for 15 minutes. And it's actually very hard to reproduce, I think, in written music, but it's very interesting challenge. And also it's that's why I believe our meeting, our encounter is interesting, because I can try to make that happen, to create atmosphere with my electronics using their sound. And you were mentioning Electric Fields before, and the pieces also that Tom wrote for the quartet, Tom Yorke, they use some electronics, and that bring their craft to another level. And it's and those mixes are really interesting. Of course, Tom Yorke can play piano, and he can program a synthesizer, but he will never be able to do what Katya and Maël do, but bring their hands to his brain and his music. That makes something really unique.
I've talked to a lot of friends of mine who are Radiohead fans, and they say, I can't believe Tom Yorke has written, well, they call it classical music. I would call it modern music, because we live in modern times, as it were. But all you have to do is listen to someone like Brad Mehldau, who can create incredible transcriptions of Radiohead songs into these beautiful, solo instrumental pieces. What impresses you most about what Tom Yorke is able to accomplish with his compositional skills?
He has something really special and amazing in the way he uses harmony, I think, because he uses the canvas of normal songs. I mean, they're never normal and they're never standard form, but still it feels like a song. But there is always a twist somewhere. There is no Radiohead song that is like your normal folk song. There is always, and the way that he manages to make that sound normal, natural, and beautiful, to me, it's the ultimate goal. And it's the same for any kind of modern music, like making something weird, new, with a twist, but making it feel simple at the same time. To me, it's the ultimate and beautiful. I mean, that's the main thing. And so, yeah, he always has like those strange chromatic chords sometimes, or the way he uses the melody to make things seem simple when actually it's all weird in the back. So yeah, that's it.
Now, when you're curating a tour with Dream House Quartet, what is the conversation that you would like to have with your work and with Bryce Dessner's work and Tom Yorke's work, to also have with older works by Philip Glass and Meredith Monk and Steve Reich?
Well, I think we'd like the audience to feel that it's the same musical realm. I mean, that there is a sense of all these musicians being on the same program and on the same list, and that it's not weird, that it's not that not there is no the classical one and the popular one, or and yeah, that's a way to to tell people that, yeah, it should be less classified and less, we're more diverse than what people think. I mean, music is just one thing.
Do you think classification genres are something that we should move away from? Are they limiting?
There are, yeah, definitely. I mean, well, it's my the when people ask me, "Are you a musician?" Okay, what kind? Then it's like, to me, it's a if I have to explain, I don't even know what to say, because it's like, yeah, okay, I have to, it's going to be a long answer if you want an answer, and I understand why there are categories, but it's very interesting to find this invisible bridge I was talking about before, and you couldn't put a name on what links all this music, Sufjan Stevens to Steve Reich to Katia Labeck, Bryce Dessner, but there is more in common than maybe in the indie pop genre. You know, people would think, okay, this genre, they're all almost the same, but some, actually, if you look wider, there are a lot more connections. It's crazy. For example, in the experimental scene, improvised contemporary music, the amount of people who know about Lutoslavsky, Stravinsky, but they have a pure, I mean, a very strong knowledge of that, and they cannot read music. And or Ligeti, you know, is a big influencer in kind of weird experimental scene that you go and see in the small clubs, and people wouldn't expect that.
Now, when I listen to your EP Innocence, which I love, I get the feeling that there is somehow an examination of how technology encroaches on our daily lives, because you have these beautiful melodies, and then there's the technology, there's the distortion, etc. And I don't know if that was your point, but I find it interesting that if it is your point, you're using the same technology to express that sentiment. What was that your goal with these 5 songs? Because we do live in a very crazy, hectic time where being innocent, being by ourselves, is just surrounded by a cacophonous amount of noise and distraction.
Yeah, no, it was not really conscious, but I'm glad you felt that. I mean, to me, there are my tools, and I feel as touched by this small keyboard and the upright piano, or my electric guitar, and so they're just tools, and I try to use them for way in soothing way for me. But yeah, the kind of music I make and I like is indeed something that try to cut out from the yeah the craziness, and put you more in a calm calming state. I was saying before, I listen to a lot of drone music or ambient, and I like to take the time and use repetition to force you into, relaxing and making a step back to just relax. Otherwise, it's true, we're always like acting crazy with what surrounds us.
Yeah, it's tough to keep that noise out sometimes too.
Yeah.
Well, I love your interest in the way you employ technology, but I'm wondering what concerns you have now with all the conversations that are going on about what AI can create and what AI can do, and whether that's going to encroach on originality at all.
As far as music is concerned, I'm really not worried at all. I mean, I find it a very interesting tool and a very scary one at the same time for many different uses. But again, it's what people are going to do with it that will make it a problem or not. And I guess we'll have to find out. But as far as music is concerned, I don't think it's a problem because honestly, the kind of music I listen to, or I like, or the people I love who make music, they bring something that no machine will ever be able to recreate. And if those machines they start making the hits of tomorrow, it won't bother me. I mean, it can totally happen. It's already something like that. I mean, it's not a proper machine, but it's like 16 guys who know how to do certain things, and so to me it's a bit soulless already, so a program can do it. But what I like in music, I think, is the opposite. It's where something magical happens and where there is soul and a life behind, and
Right.
that's never going to be reproducible.
Right. And that has heart, and no machine is ever going to have heart as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Now, an artist who has a lot of heart and has a lot of soul is somebody that I just found out that you collaborated with, and that would be Bruce Springsteen, who I have seen over 80 times in concert since 1980. So
Nice.
call me a little bit of a fan. But what can you tell me about your collaboration with Bruce on Addicted to Romance?
Oh well, that was I mean very I mean, I'm very lucky to have mixed this song. It came through Bryce Dessner, and again, it's a kind of family thing. He wrote the score for Rebecca Miller, who is a very good friend of ours. She's Daniel Day-Lewis' wife, and so she wrote this beautiful film. And Bryce scored it, and I recorded and mixed it. So I got the call from Bryce saying, "Okay, we got a song from Bruce, so I think we should mix it, and you should mix it, and we see if he's happy with it." So, but actually, that was it. I mean, I didn't collaborate. I got an email saying he was very happy with the mix, which was, I mean, very pleasing because it went well right away. So I was quite happy. But that's it. I mean. I didn't have more of a contact with him
Yet. There's
yeah.
you never know what's going to happen out of that session, right?
You never know. No.
One last question to ask you, David, and I'm going to quote Philip Glass, who's obviously we've discussed you're playing his music and have recorded it. He said the past is reinvented and becomes the future, but the lineage is everything. What do you feel your lineage is as a composer to the past, and what would you like others to see in your work who will compose 30, 40, 50 years from now?
um well yeah, that's really interesting because I think as composers we have to be humble and know that we are to me it's a job of reassembling knowledge and using your heart to put it together, and so it makes something hopefully unique, and some people may like it or not. And in my case, it's really a sum of a lot of different influences. But in terms of lineage, I'm very linked to Baroque music. As I said, my parents organize concert, and my father plays the organ and the harpsichord. He also builds harpsichords and organs, and so I grew up listening to a lot of Baroque music. And even though as a teenager I got bored by it, I quickly came back to it, and it's a huge influence uh, in my life, in my musical life. And then there is rock. I mean, as a teenager, the 60s, 70s rock mainly. I mean, from the Beatles to Led Zeppelin, and then the era I grew up in, the 90s, with the grunge, Sonic Youth, Nirvana, and then Radiohead, and then electronic music. And I mean that's it. It's so many different things, and people can grab sometimes little things, or listen to a piece I wrote for a Baroque ensemble, which sounds like maybe minimalist music, but it's played by Baroque instruments. Or in my songs, sometimes find that there is very Baroque harmony, or the fact that I use a sound that is similar to something Tom Yorke did, or it's all in there. But yeah, I like this idea that we are just rebuilding from reassembling the parts that others have left us.
Well, there are only so many notes, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are a lot more than we used to, but actually, it's interesting to look inside those notes and try to play with microtonal stuff. And but yeah, I agree.